We put a set of Silver's coilovers in the Porsche Boxster. It's a 986, and they need to be adjusted. So we've had it sitting for a couple days just to let the springs settle. The fronts are way too low. The wheels are actually up in the guard, so we need to raise it up. Every corner is a bit of a different height, and this is how to adjust them. Pretty simple with this car because the suspension on the front and the rear is virtually the same to adjust. So we'll just do the one corner, and that's gonna be the same on a lot of cars like Evos and Rexes and stuff like that as well. So we'll just go over it with this car and these coilovers. Now, what you're gonna need, pretty simple: jack, a stand, a measuring tape. I've got some calipers there, just some cheap plastic ones, and then a pen and paper to write your numbers. So we'll start by measuring. Now, there's lots of ways to measure. You can do the ground to the top of the fender, but that might be different if your car is bent and your fenders are at different heights. A lot of people do middle of the wheel to the top of the fender, or there's an arbitrary place on the chassis that people measure. Now, two places that people measure these cars from. One is under here, and it's got the little jack pad in there. Let me take that out. But there is a flat metal plate there that people can measure off there, top to bottom, or on the front suspension where the arms go. The actual factory measurement is one of the bolts there. You measure that to the ground. But I'm just going to go nice and easy, and we'll measure off that point there. So measuring off this front pad here, we are at, there's 100 millimeters, we are 110, we are 112, and we want to be probably a bit more comfortable around the 120. So we want to get it up another good, nearly another whole centimeter. So we'll go around the whole car, measure the height the exact same way, and then write it down so we don't forget, and that way we can come back to it and make adjustments and see how high we need to go. So I measured all the corners. There we go. I got two numbers for each. The top one is the number to the ground from the jack point, and then the bottom, I took a second one, which is the ground to the top of the fender on each side. So we have a little bit of raising to do. Basically, the right side is a bit lower than the left, and we want it up to the same size as the right. You should do this with a 3/4 full tank of fuel. We have 3/4 of a tank, which is fine. And we're just going to book it in to get it corner weighted later on, but they are booked out. So in order for us to be able to drive it for a bit, we're going to do this and then get a regular alignment done. So next step, we will take off the front wheel and do that, jacking up the car. Now that its wheel's off, you get a good look at the coilover. So you can see here now there's a bit of a gap there because we haven't secured that into the hub on this particular vehicle, where the bolt goes through the hub for the sway bar links. Anyway, so what we need to do is take a measurement of here. The measurement change on here of 1 or 2 millimeters does not correspond with the change in height, just because of the angles in the suspension geometry. There we go. So we will measure that distance there. That in there nicely, and we're looking at we are looking at 25 millimeters. So we want to move this up about 5 to 7 millimeters. So we'll try moving this. We'll increase that gap there by 5, put the wheel back on, and see what change that made. To adjust them, you will have a set of wrenches. Now the wrenches are to lock and unlock these rings. Some of them have 1, some of them have 2, depends on your setup, but that is nice and easy there. And then you can either use a wrench on this particular one here, and we will wind this out to change the distance here as it screws into this piece, that sleeve that goes into the hub. Your car might be a little bit different, like if it's a WRX, this piece is kind of bolted to the back of the hub, but it's still the same principle where that slides in and out. If you have something like KWs like we had on our Audi. You do not have that, and all you have is adjustable height by adjusting the spring height and the perch. At the moment, these have 0 preload on them. They're just in there nicely, and we're going to change the ride height by changing the height coming out of the hub. You grab on here. You can do it by hand if they're not too tight, and you can see the gap on the bottom is increasing, and we want to increase it by about 5 millimeters. So we'll wind that down, just get it snug, and check that height there. They're at 25, and we're aiming for 30. Couple more to go. There we go. We're just a hair over 30. We can bring it back down, but we're going to probably have to make an adjustment again. So for now, we'll just hand tighten that, put the wheel back on, check the height. Hope you like taking your wheels on and off, because we'll be doing it quite a bit with this. So the closer you can get it the first time, the better. Okay, it's down. Gonna bounce it a little bit. Springs are pretty settled anyway, just make sure everything's lined up. Measuring time. That was pretty good educated guessing. So the 5 millimeters, we put it up on the shock, move the car up nearly a centimeter. And that's what we're after. So you can see there, I have a tiny bit of wheel gap where before it was in the wheel. So that's pretty spot on. We're going to take this wheel off, tighten everything up, and then start the other corners. But that is how you adjust the suspension ride height on these coilovers, these Silvers coilovers on the Porsche and on a lot of other cars as well. Here's the after. Went around, everything's adjusted, everything's tight. But yeah, you can see that there's a bit of a gap there now, where before it was way up inside. Same with the rear. And yeah, we'll go get another alignment done so we can just drive it, and then of course get it corner weighted before the next track day, which is the real reason to get coilovers, to get it set up the perfect balance. Been very happy with those Silvers I got. These are the R spec ones. So yeah, I was able to choose my spring rates, and they adjusted the dampening on the shocks to suit. But available in a few other styles, but I'm quite happy with these, and they weren't too expensive either, so I was happy to go up for the higher spec one to be able to get that bit of extra range of adjustability in the springs. So the big question is, how does it drive? Well, just took it for a drive around the block, and it drives beautifully. Obviously the alignment's off, but dampening rights are pretty spot on. These have 40 clicks of a dampening adjustability, which is pretty fine. I mean, I'd be happy with 4 just to make it quarter adjustments. Anyway, and spring rate wise, I went for a 8 kilo front spring and a 9 kilo rear, which is 1 kilo up on either from, say, what you get with Öhlins, with the Öhlins Road and Tracks. And I just had to go with this dampening set at about 8 clicks. On both, and it felt really good. Of course, we can start dialing it in on the next track day or the test and tune day we're doing. But yeah, I had a shock leaking, which is why I went with coilovers. And instead of replacing the one shock or the pair of shocks with something else, I thought, look, I'll go coilovers, and it saves me from doing any performance suspension, and I could get more camber out of it, because there's camber tops on these, as I just showed in the photo before. So now I should be able to get close to -3 degrees camber in the front. Pretty significant. Very happy with that, and it's going to really make a difference when we put on our track tires and get out there on the next track day, which is coming up. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with the Silvers, and we'll have some more time on them in the future. But yeah, they're nice, thick. The shafts are real thick on them, and I think they're going to hold up really well. And there is a good support network in Australia for parts and service like that, so we can always get different spring rates and change that if we want to change something, if we feel we need to go stiffer or softer. And so when we went this low, we also, to get the toe adjusted right, I do have adjustable rear toe arms in this car now, so we can get the toe dialed in. Something that if you do go this low, you're gonna have to go those rear adjustable toe arms, and you can see them in the back, sort of. There they are. You're gonna have to get some rear toe arms in order to properly adjust the rear toe, because there just isn't that much adjustment in the toe on these cars from factory for the back end.